Low Carb Classics with Chef Tyler Macon, along with More Than Gourmet's classic French demi-glace, are proud to present Entrecote à la Bordelaise, our steak in a red wine sauce. A classic Bordelaise sauce contains bone marrow that has been chopped up into small pieces and poached lightly in salted water. You could forego this if you wanted to. The sauce is quite rich enough without it, but we're doing it the classic method today. I have a butcher shop near me where I can get marrow bones. Be particularly careful though about shards of bone getting into the sauce. Bring a pan of water to boil and salt it so that it has the same salt flavor as, say, seawater, and then poach the marrow for about a minute or so in the rolling boiling water. This will help remove any potential bone shards and any off-putting flavors. Once poached, remove the marrow with a slotted spoon and set aside for further use. Take a tablespoon or so of peppercorns and roughly crack in a mortar and pestle. If you don't have a mortar and pestle, then you can crack them beneath a heavy bottom pan against a cutting board. But if you're serious about cooking, you'll buy you a good mortar and pestle. A Bordelaise sauce is a reduction of wine flavored with shallots, thyme, bay leaf, and garlic. I buy shallots a gallon at a time and keep them in the freezer and then just rough chop them. I often just use them only for flavoring sauces anyway, and the final product they're strained out. So the fact that they're mushy from being froze is not a problem for me. Over medium heat, we're going to melt a tablespoon or so of butter, and then we're going to lightly saute and sweat the shallots, bringing out their flavor. We're also going to add a little seasoning at this time. We're also going to crush a clove of garlic and sweat it along with the shallots. I'm going to throw in a bundle of thyme and the bay leaf and sweat them all together for just a minute or so more. This will begin to release their essential oils. The peppercorns go in at this time as well. You want to add in a good dry red wine with plenty of body, and I use a whole bottle for this preparation. Raise the temperature to high and rapidly reduce the wine and herb mixture. When the wine is reduced by about half, then you want to add in the beef stock, and I'm using homemade beef stock that I made in another video, also posted on my website. Alternately, More Than Gourmet has a classic reduced veal stock that is really quite nice. 1.5 ounce container makes 4 cups of some very nice and flavorful stock. I'll include a purchase link below. I like to add in a shot of French brandy or cognac and then begin the reduction process again. As it's reducing, any scum that comes to the surface, skim it off with a spoon because it contains impurities and off-putting flavors. Once it's reduced by about half, remove the sauce and strain out the shallots and the herb mixture. Press all the liquid out of the shallot and herb mixture so that we can get all the full flavor into our sauce base, which we're going to set aside to be finished later right before we serve. Now we want to prepare the beef for grilling, and what we're going to do is put a light coating of salt and then sugar on both sides, just a very light coating of sugar. Don't worry, I know this is a low carb dish, but sugar mostly is going to be wiped off, but this is called a quick cure, and it'll draw the moisture out of the surface of the steak and allow for some really nice browning and allow it to develop a really nice crust. I do the same thing with salmon that I'm going to either grill or pan sear. Once done, set the steak aside for 20 minutes or so. Meanwhile, we're just going to prep some vegetables to go on the grill as an accompaniment for the steak. In this case, I'm using some sliced portobello mushroom, spraying it with a little olive oil, salt and pepper on both sides. And some cherry tomatoes on the vine. We're going to spray those with some olive oil and add a little salt. Now back to the steak. It's been sitting for about 20 minutes or so, and you can see the moisture on the outside of the steak as the salt and the sugar has drawn the moisture from the outside of the steak to the surface. Now we're going to pat that off and get that ready for grilling. To get a good brown crust, the surface of the steak, or whatever protein you might be using, needs to be very dry so that it doesn't steam. It was threatening to rain, so I brought my little hibachi grill inside and placed underneath the hood above my stove. You can do this as long as your hood vents to the outside. So we got a temperature between 500 and 600 degrees, which will make for a really nice sear on this steak. Because we did the salt and sugar cure and then dried the surface of the steak off, you won't get that nasty gray line that you often see with steaks that have been cooked when they've been wet on the surface and the meat has steamed rather than browning. Make sure that when you're searing a steak that you always do the sides all the way around and get that browning all the way around the steak. So we have a beautiful sear on the steak, and we're just going to take it. It's still rare, and we're going to set it over to a cool end of the grill. We're going to put a thermometer in it and let it continue to cook as we begin to cook our vegetables. After you sear a steak, then you add the pepper so the pepper doesn't burn in the searing process. This is a thick steak, so I'm looking for about 130 degrees in the center. I had some broccoli in the refrigerator that I previously blanched, and now I'm just heating it up on the grill and giving it some grill marks and flavor to go along with the steak. Keep the vegetables warm while the steak is resting, and we'll go ahead and finish the sauce. Bring the sauce to a boil, and we're going to add a couple tablespoons of veal demi-glace. I like this demi-glace by More Than Gourmet. I'll put a link below the video on how to purchase it. I've got about a cup and a half of reduction here, so I'm going to put in a couple tablespoons of the veal demi-glace. That should do it. Alternately, you could add one of these 1.5 ounce cups. As you dissolve the demi-glace into the sauce base, it'll thicken and become very velvety and nice in texture, and it adds a real depth of flavor to the sauce. Once you've dissolved the demi-glace completely, you can go ahead, if you're using, and put the bone marrow back in, break it up and stir it into the sauce. It's going to remain in chunks. You're not trying to dissolve it, but you want to heat it through. Once the sauce is thickened to your liking and the bone marrow is incorporated, cut off the heat, and then we're going to do the final enrichment of stirring in 2 or 3 tablespoons of butter. It's very important at this stage that the sauce is not too hot so that the butter does not separate the solids from the fat. If that happens, then you've ruined the sauce. But properly emulsified, the butter gives an extra richness and beautiful sheen to the sauce. And of course, you want a taste for flavor. So look at that. Look at that sauce. Isn't that beautiful? That's perfect. You'll never have a steak sauce better than this, I promise. So let's plate it up, shall we? We're going to put down a bed of the portobello mushrooms, and we're going to place the steak over all. Any collected juices that you have from the steak, let's pour that on. We don't want to waste that. And then let's take this unctuous Bordelaise sauce and spoon it over our steak. Here in the South, we call that slap your mama delicious. Okay, let's cut into it and see what we got. Man, it's tender. Let's look at the inside. Oh man, look at that. Perfect. No gray line. Notice because we dried the surface of the steak off, it didn't steam. We don't have any nasty gray line between the browning on the outside and the red on the inside. I hope you'll try this classic Entrecote de Bordelaise yourself. Please like and subscribe, and if you've enjoyed this video and you would like more recipes and videos, come to my website at cheftylermacon.com. That's cheftylermacon.com. Thank you very much.